I guess I've just got a slightly different journey to a lot of people who tend to fall into this thing.
Is there a theme, though? Like, is there a theme? Because I don't see a common thread between all of those pieces.
No, there's no theme whatsoever. It's pure luck and circumstance, I think. So I was a probation officer, as you know. My role evolved in the probation service to rehabilitating and working with the most serious offenders.
So this is in the UK, right?
This is in London, yeah.
Okay, in London.
I was based in
London.
I was Haringey at the time, yeah, so some naughty boys and girls there. But my role was to work with those convicted of serial killing, murder, serious sexual offending, terror offences. So there'll be some household names that I worked with that some viewers may or may not have heard of. People who'd killed, dozens of people and buried their bodies under the floorboards and had sex with them and chopped them up into pots and boiled them and flushed them down the toilet and stuff. And they weren't the worst people, believe it or not. But you don't hear of everybody. But it was a really interesting role, an opportunity to learn the kind of psychology of people. One thing that I'm quite good at now, I think, is I can spot good from bad. It's an interesting question, good and bad. I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday that I met, really interesting guy. It's like, what's good and what's bad? Is somebody bad because they've done a bad thing? Does that make them inherently bad? Have you done a bad thing before? Probably.
Yeah, plenty of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there's bad to yourself, and then there's bad to other people,
bad to
right?
others.
There's victimless crimes, there's victim crimes.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to me because a lot of people who'd done the worst things inherently had been, at least at one point, good people, but had developed facilities within their own mind to be able to facilitate things that you and I couldn't even think about doing to other people. Some people are crimes of passion. Some people and the majority is learnt behaviour. Anger begets anger. And, if you are shown how to respond to challenging situations with anger, that's typically how you'll respond yourself, unless you're shown another way. Others are far more complex. When you facilitate yourself to do something to somebody that you know is wrong but still do it, then it becomes a more interesting conversation with that person when you're rehabilitating with them, or you're at the point where they're getting sentenced. And they may be a little less free to share the truth. So getting to understand why people have done things is something that really helped me.
Do you think that if you look at, say, the journey of a criminal, I say criminal, that there's an assumption there, right, with the people that you're working with, or someone who's been pre-conviction, do you see a journey of the truth based on what that person's agenda is at the particular time? So maybe if you think about, and I'm just kind of hypothesizing here, when you go in and you're analyzing that individual, maybe the agenda of that person is to manipulate you. Maybe the agenda of that person is to get you to like them. But to that point, when you get to sentencing or when you get to judgment, maybe it's more around actually mitigating the sentence. Do you see that?
Yeah. I mean, it's course. I mean, paedophiles are the most compliant criminals of them all. Violent criminals tend to be the most fuck off. They deserved it. There are, you can't lump everyone into one bracket, and everyone has an agenda, particularly at the point where they're about to get sentenced. They want to portray themselves as the nicest person they possibly can that was pushed into doing something. The way a lot of people trip themselves up at that point is that I fucking know that. So I know that you're telling me something that you want me to believe. So my role is to judge why you're telling me that and to actually extrapolate from you.
I understand.
Why you're telling me this, and then challenge you to understand why you're telling me this. And that can be quite difficult for certain people who are on the other side of the chair from me to react to when you've caught them out on their agenda.
Is that because you're quite often, and again, I don't know if this is true, I'm just going off the literature that I've read, but you're generally working with sociopaths, narcissists. Is that correct or incorrect? Or is it dependent on the particular crime?
I'd say sociopathy is rare. Narcissism is more frequent. Behavioral traits based on experiences are the most common.
Okay. So trauma-driven responses.
Yes.
Okay.
And you do what you see, right? Or have been shown or taught. Now, this is a broad rule. It doesn't apply to everybody. People who've been sexually abused don't become sexual abusers just because they were sexually abused. There's a far higher likelihood, I'd say 99% of people who go on to sexually offend were offended, had crimes committed against them, because it then impacts their development, their emotional development, to a certain point. So when they come to the point where they make a decision around what it is they want to do, they revert to that time and that experience. So that's what allows them to cross the line, despite or in spite of knowing that they really fucking shouldn't. So it's you have to treat every case differently. There's obviously common themes in nearly everything in life, and why you offend is one of them.
And that comes back to the whole parenting thing, right? And it took me, I mean, I'm 50 now, right? 51, and it took me a good 45 years to get to the point where I started analyzing how I was brought up. And that's thanks to having a wife who's a psychologist who forced me to confront those things. But I always thought I had the perfect life, right? I still feel incredibly blessed, but sometimes when you look at your behaviors, you look at your actions, and then you start to really analyze them, and you look at where, especially the negative ones, right? The ones that you're forced to look at, where did that come from? And you start to realize that
the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
It doesn't. Yeah. And I'm really.
And you don't even know you're doing it.
No, you don't.
No, I can be a snappy fucker sometimes. I'm like, what was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you realize it. So the skill is then, learning how not to do that.
And so would you say, so if you think about that, where you say you snap, and I can be really moody, right? So that's a similar trait. Would you say that that's just exacerbated? Is that exacerbated by the seriousness of the negative interactions you have when you're a child, or is that exacerbated by the repetition, or is it both?
It can be both. I same as you. I feel pretty blessed. And my parents are great, and they're both still here. So hi. And they did the best they can, and they're wonderful people. And my mum's probably the nicest person on earth, but she's also someone who swallows emotion rather than processes it. No. So that goes.
That's very British. She's British, right? Yeah. My mum's British as well. She is exactly the same.
Yeah. And that's worse for her than anyone else. Obviously, if you just swallow emotion all the time, I don't think you need to process every fucking thought that you have. Because you wouldn't get out of bed.
Exactly. Stiff upper lip.
Because stiff upper lip is good in some certain senses, and when we get to some of it later, because I've got quite a strong view on this. Sometimes you just have to do to get through to the next stage, right? Because if you try and understand why everybody did everything that they did, and that impact upon you, and you try and facilitate in your head, what does that mean? Oh God, it's a viper's nest when that happens. So a stiff upper lip is meritable sometimes, not when you really need to process something, but if someone's pissed you off, right? You can move past it quickly. It becomes a choice, which is part of Ikigai, I think. The choice of how you decide to feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Viktor Frankl, The Meaning of Life, Man's Search for Meaning. He was in Auschwitz. Doesn't get much worse, but his happiness was based on how he chose to feel and the attitude that he adopted to the situation he was in. Logo theory, I think it was.
And you know what's really important on that as well is society and the people around you will often call you naive for taking that approach as well, whether it's the approach of positivity or just accepting things, naive or weak. But I actually look at it as the complete opposite, because there is an element of suffering, internal suffering that you have by, like you said, with your mum, my mum, they swallow the emotion, but then also that gives you an element of strength, and that strength comes through how you act, how you let those things impact your emotional being as well.
Yeah, 100%. Nobody is perfect and nobody ever will be. Nobody will be perfect at ratifying their own emotional state 100% of the time. I'm not a Buddhist monk and maybe they can.
You kind of sound like one sometimes, though, mate.
You haven't seen me on a Saturday night, Lee. Well, actually, you have.
I have. Just on this as well, when we talk about the Brits, right? Are you familiar with the premise of Stoicism, right?
Yes.
It's like the Greek premise. And I think there's a lot of parallels you can draw there with that British mindset and Stoicism. I was reading a really interesting, I actually learned something the other day. I learned something good rather than necessarily being on social media and learning some rubbish. But it was the term that I'd never heard of. It was called Stoic rewilding, right? And you might be familiar with like the UK does a lot of this rewilding, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's farmland that used to be beautiful kind of brush, and then they kind of convert it back to the natural habitat, and all of the birds and the badgers and stuff all arrive back. And this premise is primarily, you're obviously younger than me, but when you get into your 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up to whatever your kind of final number is, there's this premise of stoic rewilding where it's this merging of kind of acceptance of letting go of the ego, which again, I think for your mum, my mum, and what we do, sometimes you have to let go of your ego to not feel offended by that person you were relating to. So that whole premise of stoicism, but then adding in this piece of rewilding, and the rewilding is both factual and it's metaphorical, and whatever the other one is, right? Metaphorical in that you are like, as a person, like a land that has been farmed, which is your past 40 years where you're creating businesses and you're creating money and you have children and you build a house and you get a car and blah, blah, blah. And that's your farming. But then as you get into your 40s, 50s, you need to start taking that land back to what it was originally when you were younger. So that's kind of it's a double entendre oracle kind of thing. And I really like that and how it fits with also letting go of the ego as well. I thought it was I'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had a point to make then, I've slightly forgotten it, but there's physical ways you can help yourself.
That's because I rabbit on a lot and I interrupt a lot, so you'll get used to it.
We'll get used to it. I'm used to it.
You can come back to it, man.
You know, there's a reason. And we're talking about rewilding here, and talking about like weeding the garden. There's a reason why everyone feels more happy in the shower or the garden doing their weeds, because what you do is you disassociate your mind, albeit temporarily. It might be golf for some people, whatever, you get the gist. That's why we all have the best ideas in the shower, because our brain switches off from consistently thinking about one thing. And our minds are pretty smart. It all just comes together when you're not thinking about it. You've got all the information in there. It doesn't leave. And that's why people who don't think about everything all the time tend to be a little bit happier and quicker to move past a problem that they're focused on a lot. And this is stoicism. So I fucking can't stand that guy for what he said. Right, I'm going to go and weed the garden. Oh, he probably did it because of that. And your mind gives you the answer sometimes. Because if you focus so acutely on something, then you're focusing acutely on something. You don't have the bigger picture. In terms of the rewilding as we get older and looking back towards how we were when we were younger, I don't know enough. I'm going to take a look at that afterwards, because I don't know, the older you get, the more things you have to do, right? The more things you have to take care of, and the more stressful it becomes. And actually, everyone, I watched a clip the other day. There was a fucking really, really smart guy, very successful. Because there's nothing better at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning with your pals in a tent, hearing that of a beer for the first time. Because you've got nothing on your plate that day, right? It's not the beer, it's not the boys, it's the situation you're in, and sometimes just kind of, people use that word, but just returning to a more primal state is actually sometimes quite good. And when we talk, well, obviously we're going to talk about Ikigai, but when you get into that state, we're all busy. Like Dubai's a busy place. Everyone's here to better themselves typically, whether that's financially, for their business, whatever. And their purpose might be, right, I want to grow the best business out there. Sometimes I think you don't need a purpose for everything. Sometimes you just need to exist and not be thinking about something else. Because I had a question for you, is purpose, and we'll get to it maybe, but is purpose important in Ikigai? Yes, it is, because you need something to do, but can that just be something very small? Could that just be, right, today I'm going to have a good day? That's purpose, right? But there's no end goal other than to have a good day. It's not to, right, I will make £1 million by the end of May, right? That brings a lot into it that you've got to do and facilitate and ignore other things and do other things. And you can't see your daughter as much. You can't do X, Y. It just becomes this big thing. Sometimes getting up and going, I have a fucking great day today. I'm going to go for a swim over there.
Absolutely.
I'm going to nap.
If you look at purpose, there's two lenses you can put on it, right? There's your interpretation of purpose, and that can be down at the micro, so the day or the year, right? And then there's society's interpretation of purpose, and society can be anyone from your wife, your kids, all the way through to the taxi driver, through to your colleagues, and through to the wider cultural fit that you are perceived to have or need to have in whatever country you're in. And I think that if you look at the micro level, the example you used of, getting up and just going for a swim and getting through the day, having a great day and going back to bed, right, and feeling good. I think that that's when you can get to that point where you are concerned with your purpose and that's your business versus that, and disconnecting from the ego, disconnecting from society's magnifying glass onto what your purpose should be, that's when you can reach true happiness. And that doesn't mean, for a guy like you, right, that doesn't mean you're going to sit in bed all day and twiddle your thumbs and be on Instagram. Your purpose might be, like you said, get up, you love swimming. Going to have a swim. I'm going to do some calisthenics. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to smash it. I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to do whatever I want. But that is your purpose for that particular day. And I think that, purpose doesn't need to be predefined. And that's where we get too caught up on purpose equals the outcome and whatever that is.
100%. Like, we can take ourselves too seriously. And actually, sometimes I think you do need to be a bit selfish. And that doesn't mean, I don't think being selfish is a bad thing for the people around you. But if you're okay, typically the people around you will be okay. So if you have a day where you're like, right, going to exercise this morning, I'm going to find a pub on a back street that I've never been to, and I'm going to have 3 Negronis.
Sounds like a perfect day.
Yeah. And I'm going to watch the football in that pub later.
So good.
Or whatever it is. Or I'm going to go to a football match, or I'm going to play golf, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to go to the cinema or the theatre, whatever it is that you want to do. Sometimes you just need that time for yourself where you can stop the neurons firing all the fucking time. Because it's tiring.
Again, and I'm thinking about, every Thursday night, I may have told you this, but I catch up with 2 guys, right? And we play video games. Every Thursday night. Sometimes it's remote, but 90% of the time we catch up at someone's place. In fact, it was my place last night, and I cleaned it up because it was a mess afterwards. That my wife said to me a couple of months ago. She said, how can you do that so regularly? Don't you get sick of each other? And this is exactly. And there is purpose, there's intent around that, making sure that happens every single week. There's intent around just switching off and just talking rubbish. We don't drink, right? We don't sit around drinking. We just sit there. We just play video games. And this is, 40-year-old men sitting around on a Thursday.
It's a reset.
Yeah. Now, if you put that from a judgment perspective from society, sometimes we're sitting here having tea, playing video games and having tea in your 40s. You could say societally there's nothing sadder, right? But it's one of the things that gives me, true joy. Just like these conversations, just like my wife, just like my kids. It's right up there with the things that I love.
Yeah, I think not caring what others think is quite an important thing as well. Sometimes I will, if it's really personal. If it's what somebody thinks of me, it's what somebody thinks of me, and they're entitled to that view and that opinion. And if I want to sit down and play Fortnite for 4 hours with 2 of my best mates, because that's what makes me happy, and then I finish and I'm just calm, then so be it. Whatever that thing is a really good thing for you, whoever you are.
Can I ask you just on the judgment thing, because I've, again, coming back to the career piece, right, I've kept it very linear around, it's like a chain linking between data, technology, financial services, etc. On the judgment piece, family, friends, partners, society, did you find that there was a lot of judgment moving from the work you were doing, which is, and I'm making an assumption here, but the work that you were doing was, very, I can imagine, very cathartic, very empathetic. It has serious societal impact, right? Working with offenders, criminals, et cetera, et cetera. You're doing that, and then and this is where the assumption comes in, then you're moving into recruitment. With all due respect to recruiters and HR, of course, I can definitely see the connect between the psychology and the human analysis, the human behavior, and also picking up narcissists and sociopaths is really important.
Yeah.
But did you find that there was any judgment moving to that next sort of stage? Was there a sort of interim career, or did you just move straight into setting up your own business?
So I had a bromance with a guy called Neil. I'd taken recruitment probation as far as I could go. I was thinking about what I could do next, and he set up his own recruitment company. Successful guy at a big firm. He was like, "Do you fancy doing it? I think you'd be good at it." It was literally an instantaneous decision.
Wow.
Like, it was a beer. Yeah, I'll do it. So I resigned. Finished on a Friday. Started on the Monday. Honestly, judgment was really positive. I think I'm quite fortunate that I got a very good group of friends, always have done, and family, and everyone was completely supportive. I was in my mid-30s at the time, and earning my age as my salary in London, so it was like, well, yeah, go and do something else. And did that for a few years with him before I set up my own recruitment business, and obviously I'm doing the new thing now. No, the judgment was pretty positive, actually. There was a few people inside of probation who were like, why would you leave this to go and be a fucking recruiter?
Is it public service when you're working in probation? It's
for the Home Office, yeah.
Okay.
So it's public sector, yeah.
Okay. So you can imagine that there'd be, there's that type of mindset, right?
Yeah.
Moving to a different career, but also then in the future setting up your own business.
Yeah, I also think at that point in probation, it was not a good time due to governmental cuts and the privatization of certain parts of the industry, whether it be prisons, whether it be the cognitive courses that people were being put on that were just fucking nonsense, trying to get someone who's got serious issues to do. I think it was called Think First or something like that. It's just like, it's going to not help at all.
Is that like in New Zealand, they had something similar called Care in the Community, where there's...
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bollocks.
Yeah. Similar kind of...
But it might not be, I don't know. But, I think...
I love it. Sounds bollocks. But it does sound bollocks, right?
Yeah. But, if someone's been doing bad for a long time, it's generational, and you don't just do a course to unpick it. You actually have to have someone working tirelessly with that person and taking an active interest and challenging them all the time. And that's what rehabilitation lacks, not just in the UK, but everywhere. It's to really unpick why somebody's done something. It takes a long time, a lot of care, a lot of thought, a lot of consideration, a lot of skill. And we just try and box people who've done loads of different things together into a 4-week course. The sentiment is good. The reality is less so, I think. But now, on the whole, everyone was extremely positive, and I'm very happy that I did it.
Is there a pattern working with parolees and working with candidates?
I've still got a recruitment company. I'll be politically correct. Do you know what? Not really.
Okay, how about I put it this way? I was kind of of course I was being facetious.
No.
The skill set that you use...
That's what I was going to say.
As a recruiter.
100%. Because you ask probing, sequential questions to get to a point where you think you're going to get a certain answer or not. Recruitment becomes very easy quite quickly. I think if you've got the psychology side of it, naturally you need to know your subject matter, of course, know your clients, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that makes a good recruiter. But, it's a human-based decision to leave a job and to go to something else. Everyone looks for a reason, but the reality is, for a lot of people, is when the time comes, actually, do I want to? I think the skill is really finding out what somebody wants first before you even start anything, and that's on the client and the candidate side.
How do you... So looking at the candidates and just kind of diving a little bit deeper into recruitment, I've got so many questions, right? But on the candidate side, how do you Aside from putting a person at ease and making them feel comfortable, how do you get to the end result with someone who's, say, particularly nervous, right? Let's say you look at the piece of paper and you can say, this person definitely has the skill set to be able to do this particular job. And maybe it's in the technology space where by rights, often people who work in technology don't necessarily have the highest EQ. Maybe they're sort of more on the left or right brain side. So how do you make someone feel comfortable, and how do you cut through all of those pieces to be able to define whether they're the right candidate?
To go into the three things we taught is information.
Okay.
So if you've been at a job for a long time, but you know you want to change, you're not really sure why, you have to do that first. It's quite easy to understand what someone has done. You just ask them what they've done and you get them to show you, what did you do in this job and how did you do it? What was good? What was bad? All that kind of the easy stuff. It's the why do you want to move?
Is there a perfect answer for that?
No.
That you're looking for?
No. It will depend on what the client's looking for too. Now, every role again is different. If you're a startup, a lot of it's going to be what's the commitment you want to make to a startup, and what does this mean for your life, and what do you want to do? What's the long-term goal? Some people, and especially back in the day, it was someone moved from an analyst position, Goldman, to an associate position at Bank of America, to a AVP position at Deutsche, to a VP position at wherever, JP Morgan. That was easier to do because it was money driven. I think the job market's changed quite a lot in the last few years, where it's also about, well, actually, I really want to enjoy what I do. It's not just about taking home the fattest paycheck at the end of the month I can. So I think the crucial place to always start is what do you actually want, and not just take as read what somebody tells you they want. It's the why. It's to ask that question until it can only be a yes or a no. And then that's when I think you know what somebody really wants. There's been several occasions where, this sounds a bit bullying, but I said, you got to fucking interview for this because I know it's what you want. I'm not sure. And I've said, you've got to do it. You've got nothing to lose. Go and do it. And they're still there now, several of those people. Because you know your client well enough, and then you get to know your candidate personally and what it is they really want. Recruitment gets a bit of a bashing. It's not an easy industry, I don't think. People don't really have that much control over their clients anymore, I don't think. And they're like, right, we want a job. They don't ask, okay, why? Have you got the money for it? What's it for? Where's this job going to go? Oh, no, we just want to meet a few people. You need to have control on both sides. It's actually a really hard job to do well. That's why there's so few recruitment companies that do really well. The ones that do really care about their clients and candidates and actually put the time in, and then scale up in that way. Those are the recruitments that are huge and transact billions a year because it's just the flow of contract staff that they need. And that's fine too. Yeah, but every company should be a little bit different and so on. But always find out what the person really wants and whether they're there to stick it out or not.
So just let's pick that apart a little bit, right? So that's an empathy-led engagement, right? Where you're really trying to tease out.
You should manage people out of a process, not in.
So if you take that piece, and we kind of look at artificial intelligence as an example, right? Artificial intelligence is primarily about automation through information. Actually, I've never said that before. That sounds good. That rhymes. I just made that up. I'm sure it's been said by someone a lot smarter. But automation through information. And you also said something really interesting that recruitment gets a bad rap. And what we're seeing now with the application of AI is it's being applied in many of the industries that do get a bad rap. And they're sort of the first cabs off the rank. Why? Because generally industries get a bad rap because there's a perception around value versus cost, generally speaking. So I'll give a good example. I on a previous podcast, I talked to a lawyer, and I was very adamant that AI is coming for lawyers. And we talked about it, and we found a good middle ground.
It's coming for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, lawyers get a bad rap. I mean, they're right up there with politicians, right? So why? Because they are expensive and people don't see the value. So just sort of coming back to recruitment, and I don't actually feel that way about recruitment. I think recruitment is incredibly valuable, and a good recruiter can be not only a friend for life, but they can also be a business contact,
a professional
contact for life. So I'm waffling again, but just bear with me. I'll get to the point. So if we look at the application of technology, which is all about automation, and there's a desire to automate the recruitment, the HR process, whether it's internal or external, yet what you're saying is there's such a critical empathy component here. And what we do know is that the one thing that AI for the foreseeable future, let's just give us the next 50 to 60 years, which is a long time in technology, but it's really going to struggle with those empathy-led pieces of engagement, that human component. So where do you see, firstly, AI being applied in recruitment? And secondly, do you see recruitment ever being entirely automated? Okay. And I guess lastly, what are you doing in your businesses to apply AI? I know we'll get to, maybe this is also a segue into what you're doing around the compliance piece and AML CFT, but can you kind of talk a little bit about the recruitment?
So I think AI is coming for everyone: salespeople, recruiters, lawyers, accountants, everyone.
Except for CEOs.
Hopefully.
That's what I'm hoping.
Hopefully. I think AI is great, and I think AI is there to absolutely use information to allow you to do things better, quicker, smarter, faster.
It's a cheaper, better.
Yeah, and I'll come to what our business is doing at the moment, and all the investors we speak to is like, well, how is AI not going to take over your business? And there's quite a simple answer for it. AI can't yet make a nuanced decision, empathically or otherwise, around what somebody is thinking or doing. And in my business, which is risk-focused, there is no way a regulator on earth can, should, or would in the foreseeable future allow an AI bot to make a risk-based decision on a client, person, individual, or otherwise that could meaningfully impact a business. Recruitment is, particularly on the permanent side, contracting is slightly different when you've got a needs-based exercise that just needs bodies to clear it. It's about the person. We're building robots at the moment, for which I'll come to, that can go and ask 10,000 people a day if we want, what's your skill set? What do you do? Where have you done it? What regulator have you worked under? There's 100 things you could get it to ask. There's no way that you can ask via AI, will you accept, yes or no? Well, you can ask it, but back to the criminal's choice, did you do it, yes or no? You know what the answer is going to be. No for the offender and yes for the thing, because they want the job. But can they actually do it? Will they actually stick it out? That's something a human is safeguarded against for the foreseeable future from AI, I think. Getting the information to streamline a process, all of us, because it's the future, is it not? Everyone's doing it. Everyone's talking about it. It's like 6 years ago, if you put blockchain into a pitch deck, you got given 5 million quid.
Exactly.
It's the same with AI now, but AI is a far bigger subject than nearly all of us understand, myself included. And most people sell their AI businesses. They're just doing predictive analytics or something similar. Exactly. They're not actually utilizing AI. There was a few questions you asked, so I can't remember what all of them were, but AI will take parts of, I think, all jobs, whether that's an operational, sales, legal. Of course it will. AI wrote a report that McKinsey charged $1.5 million for and did it exactly the same based on the information. Actually did it slightly better because it was able to source open information and collate and collaborate something right. So, the big strategic consultants are also going to be hit by this. The big four are going to be hit by this. Recruitment will be hit by this. Everyone will be hit. So it's how you adapt to it and how you utilize it. So for me, as you know, I'm building Tinder for compliance. So we are looking to run very large scale KYC, AML, transaction monitoring, portfolio review and remediation projects for firms that are regulated. Firms that have either got into trouble, most of it is, of course, non-deliberate. It's just a build-up of work, or just firms who are very busy and have got a fiduciary responsibility to review the files that they have in their business. And by files, I mean people, UBOs, companies. If it's a law firm in Cayman, then they're going to have typically SEMA-based funds, but they have a fiduciary responsibility to review those people and the UBOs within it to ensure that they're not, politically exposed or there's any suspicious activities, or they are who they say they are when the company is still who they are a year later from being onboarded. We won't get into any of that now. There's so much of that information that, I mean, and AI is probably too much, that technology can go and source for you or the person that's doing those reviews. But to assess whether they're a risk or not
is the human component.
Has to be. It has to be. Because can you imagine something going wrong? Oh, yeah, we used a robot to do it. Okay. So I think for information gathering, decision making, lots of things, trading, you saw high frequency trading just changed the need for people to be on a trading floor because it became a nanosecond difference that made the difference, not the relationship that the person had with the broker.
Exactly.
So it all changed quite quickly. But I think for most things, people, and there is a want in here as well, want to speak to somebody, or want a decision that's going to have a meaning impact on their lives. They need a person to do it. Like estate agency, for example.
Yeah.
You want to speak to the people that have lived there or who are selling it and really find out about it. You can be given a list of 100 things that you've asked for on the property and all about it, but you still want to see it and smell it and feel it and speak to the people who've lived there and what are the good things, what are the bad things.
Can I just look, because this is what I do, right? I interrupt. Can I just get you to, let me take a contrarian view to what you've said, because what I hear around that people wanting the human component is a common thread through many of the podcasts that I've the people I've interviewed, right? And when I've asked not similar questions, but when we've talked about the disruptive nature of AI, and this keeps on coming back, people want this engagement with humans. I want to take a contrarian view. I like this engagement with you. It's a great chat. You're a great guy, right? I like an engagement with my wife. I like to talk to my kids. I love to catch up with my friends. Everyone else, I'm pretty good with, to be honest. And I want to give you an example. So you now live here in the UAE, right? Everything's done on WhatsApp. When people call you, that's the last thing I want. I don't even answer
my phone.
Of course, it can be a scam, but most of the time, I just don't answer. Now, I think about when I went back to New Zealand during COVID, and we were locked down in a hotel in quarantine. And I was ordering a whole lot of food for when I got out. And people kept on, the supermarket kept on calling me, hey, the lime dishwashing liquid that you've ordered, we don't have, we only had the lemon dishwashing, right? The dishwashing liquid. And this happened about 4 or 5 times. And it drove me absolutely up the wall, right? I didn't need this, and I couldn't understand the value in this person calling me. In fact, it just seemed like a complete waste of my time and a waste of their time compared to, say, Dubai, where everything's just fully automated. I want to take that example and just apply it to say, if you were talking to someone in 20 years from now, when hopefully I would say, in my view, that 80-90% of the roles that are customer service are just taken out. I actually think that that's a positive thing where you don't have to deal with people, and we can allocate our time more to these valuable interactions, but interactions of meaning, interactions of passion, interactions of depth, rather than interactions of process. And so even with compliance, I would put compliance right up there with, say, the medical industry, right? I would hope that we don't need doctors in 10 years, especially GPs, maybe a surgeon, but to research and oversight. I don't know. I mean, I have a slightly different view. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think your view is that contrarian. I think I agree with it. We don't need conversation for conversation's sake, or interaction or engagement for engagement's sake.
Unless you're in Italy and they love
Unless you're in Italy, of course, yeah. The AI doesn't exist in Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's a really good point, and we'll come back to that. That's the beauty of life in many ways. Not being called about your fucking dishwasher liquid. Just fucking message me and I'll say yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Or just no.
But we are, most of us, people who enjoy interaction in some way, shape or form. Not in terms of buying X, Y, and Z online, or many of the things that we talked about there, or, making a decision on what trade to book or what file to review. No, absolutely not. I completely agree with you that, cut that noise out and you can get more done to engage on the better interactions. I think when you come to, and let's talk about business, decisions that need to be made, it has to be eye to eye. And you want to know what the other people are feeling. Anything process-led that can be removed from a pointless conversation, 100% with you. Completely agree. But I think we'd be in a very sad world if we just whittled everything down to a electronic communication. And I'm not saying that will happen or won't. It will happen a lot more. And we'll speak to a lot of people in the service industry less, and the medical profession less, or the accounts team less, or wherever less. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? We'll see how it plays out. But people like other people. That won't protect jobs, but it won't quell the human spirit and what we like to do.
Yeah, but can't we apply the human spirit into different ways? So, I mean, I look at you, right? You talked about bravery before. You're a brave man, right? You've brought your family here to Dubai. You've moved countries. You've set up businesses. Isn't the higher emotional value-based decisions, those pillars of what it is to be a human, aren't they more important than the smaller components in our life? And if we can, again, I think we both agree that if you can remove the noise, then you can focus on those higher pieces. It's challenging moving to a different country, right? There's the process, there's getting a new house. I think you're moving houses again. All of those things, if you can just automate them so you can focus more on the family component, earning the money, etc. I mean, if we can cut all of that out, and do you know what? I would love to set up a company that's just focused on removing people out of businesses. I think that there's a real business opportunity there.
Yeah, there is.
But what you're creating, yes, of course there'll be pushback, but what you're creating is you're allowing people to become human and to focus on the things that are more.
Yeah, you focus on higher value interactions.
Yeah.
But not everyone's born equal either. Sorry, I just kicked the table.
That's okay. Not everyone's born equal.
And I'm worried for a lot of people who won't move with the times for one reason or another. I think everybody's born capable, but everyone's not born equal based upon where you live. And I think it's going to impact a lot of people and a lot of jobs. And we have a big population on this planet at the moment. There's some troubling times coming, I think, for those who are happy people, who work in a job that they love and they feed their family, and they're probably happier than 95% of the people here, frankly. What are they going to do when this inevitable sweep comes? So I think we need to look at that.
Do you think with your move to Dubai and the company that you have recently set up, do you think that this region is the place to be for, say, the next decade when we look at this massive sea change? I don't think anyone who believes there's not a big change coming has their head under a rock, and I don't worry for them. They have what they're coming to them. And I'm sorry, I come across as a zero empathy guy, but I actually don't care, because I think that people have a responsibility, right? They have a responsibility to learn coding, to learn about AI, to just use one of the models. Yeah. There was someone I was speaking to in New Zealand recently, and the research backs this up as well. A very smart guy in the technology space. And he said to me, completely deadpan, I haven't even used ChatGPT or any of these models, and I'm proud of that, because I just don't want to use it. And when you get to that point, you think that's where my worry for these people kind of just falls out. But do you think you're in the right place now for the type of business that you're driving, for the future of your kids, for just being at the center of, I guess, the center of excellence, or is it somewhere else?
I think for now, for me, from a selfish perspective, Dubai is brilliant. It's safe, it's clean. There's opportunity here. People are friendly. There's opportunity for somebody like me. Plenty. It's fantastic
for someone who's brave like you.
I don't know if I'm brave. I didn't feel like coming here was a brave decision.
But that's the thing with people who are brave. They don't see that bravery. And if you compare it to most other people who are just getting on with their day-to-day lives, you had a young daughter, a wife, it takes a lot of balls to pack up your things
Yeah.
and move to a different country.
Well, maybe I am, because it didn't feel like that. Interestingly, it just felt right. This is it. Got to do it. It was literally just. Should we go to Dubai? Yeah, I love Dubai. Okay.
Were you moving away from something as much as you were moving to, like the carrot and stick, or was it more?
So I don't want to bash the UK here, but I was finding it quite a suffocating place at the time. It was I think post-COVID, London changed quite a lot, just the way it felt to be there. And I think, the situation around how businesses are treated and so on and so forth, and you look politically aligned, particularly in any way, shape or form, but a happy place to live is when people have opportunity, and that's typically a job or work or purpose. And I think that's becoming increasingly harder to do. If you are 85% of jobs are with SMEs, I think I don't know if that's the right number, but it will be around that figure. If you make it more difficult to hire people, you're fucked, because then you're not creating employment and revenue and the tax that comes with it. And then people who have got money move to somewhere like this or Bali or wherever it is people are going now, because they don't pay tax and they can do business. I've got business here, but I've got business in the US, Asia, all across Europe, South America. For me, it feels like a really nice place to have settled to do work. Partly time zone, but mainly because it's a really good place to live. I'm not on Instagram, but everyone thinks, who hasn't been to Dubai, it's the Palm and the tower blocks. It's not. I live in a very quiet community where you can't hear a thing or see anything. And I think that's true for a lot of expats. I get why people don't like it on the surface, because it's new. Well, everywhere was new at once. My daughter's school, there's 12 kids in her class. They're from 12 different countries, and she's speaking 4 different languages at the moment.
Wow.
It wasn't happening where I was in London. And we've made a hell of a lot of friends here quickly. And, I don't add new friends to my roster particularly easily. But I've met a couple of really, really good people out here. So I think this place is going to explode. We think it's busy now. I get 4 or 5 messages a week. I've moved. Do you have any roles? Well, no, I'm not in recruitment anymore, but my team is. Yeah, please speak to them.
Completely right. And to your point, you're not bashing your home country. I'm happy to bash my home country sometimes because of the way they treated me during COVID and those things. And those scars will never heal for when you can't travel to go see your children. That will never heal. But the reality is much more important, is that Dubai is a fantastic place to live.
It is.
Like you said, it's safe. The weather's great.
Yeah.
The people in Dubai. And
it's amazing.
I think just like everyone seems to think that Dubai is the glitz and the glamour and the noise and the hustle and the bustle, they also think that people are quite vacuous, that there's this vacuous nature. But the depth of talent, depth of quality of people here, 100%. And they're so friendly. It doesn't matter what where you're from. It's an amazing place to live.
It's an amazing place to live. I'm not a religious person in any way, shape or form, but I've spoken to so many people out here about Islam and learned so much about it. It's fucking cool. It's really cool. It's a kind place. And I think a lot of people think, okay, well, it's a service industry and you've got a huge number of people living in Sharjah from the subcontinent who are, almost enslaved to work here. Once you get here, you realise that isn't the case, and they're paid a lot more than they would be at home, and it's a way to use that UAE India kind of remittance corridor to better their families' lives as well. Nowhere's perfect, of course, and
just coming back to religion as well, and I think that and you talked about politics before. And being here, just by the very nature of what Dubai is, right? It's multicultural, and it's also a benevolent. To describe this, there's benevolence from the top to drive this country to be better. When you put those two pieces together, what happens is, as an individual living here, is firstly you become depoliticized. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, because everything is done done for the good of the people here in the UAE. You know, we have the Ministry of Happiness or whatever it is.
Yeah, happiness centers. Yeah.
Happiness centers.
They're not that happy, but yeah.
No, it can be quite frustrating. So the first part is you have that sort of benevolent overview, right? And the second part is, so you're depoliticized by the very nature of the country. But then secondly is you're removed from your own country, which can be highly politicized. So you disconnect. You don't read the news anymore. You know, I don't read the local rags back in New Zealand. So you become disconnected and you start to become happier from that disconnect. And then from the religious piece as well, you know, whether you had any lasting xenophobia or whatever kind of piece, whatever term you want to put in around how you feel towards different cultures through not knowing and not being exposed to them, that gets ripped down very quickly.
There's a real beauty in seeing prayer here.
And some of the I love 5 in the morning. Love that.
I was driving in Al Barshi the other day, and there was just 1,000 people on the road praying because it was the time, and that's just in the middle of it's an amazing thing. Yeah. It's very calm. It's very calming, and it's very.
Do you know that makes me more emotional talking about those types of things than I think of certain cultures back in my home country, which I've disconnected from, because I feel so connected with this place for the opportunity that it gives us.
I love it. It's a really liberating place to be.
I want to ask you this. I mean, you're such a positive guy, right? We've come here to Dubai. We were talking the other day about pain, right? Dealing with pain. I know you've got, you know, you've smashed your elbow.
Fucking old bastard.
You're running your own businesses. How do you stay? And I genuinely mean this. I don't think I've asked this of any of I've interviewed, and there's been many. But how do you stay so positive? Like you caught up with my son a couple of weeks ago, right? And he was really thankful for that meeting. He loved talking to you. Because you inspire through that positivity.
We had a few glasses of wine each, though, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, you did, because he's a young man, right? So, did you? I mean, how do you stay so positive? I did as well, actually. Yeah.
You might have.
Yeah.
It was mainly me.
Tell me.
I don't know. So,
is it baked in to you? Is it or is it because you're a really positive guy? And I don't mean that in a sort of.
I try to be. I think I'm not always, and I let myself sometimes overthink the littler things.
Is it a persona, or is it really truly who you are?
I don't think it's a persona. I do struggle internally sometimes, but it's the stoicism in the end that I turn to. If you then take a step back, well, fucking things are great, really. That might be a problem, that might be a problem, that might be a problem, but none of it matters. It's all a construct anyway. Everything's a construct. I don't mean we're living in the Matrix, but everything's built around us.
I agree with you, 100%. It's your own matrix.
Yeah. I think it's more fun being positive than it's being negative. So the power now is quite an important thing. And I do just like to swap problems away that I'm never going to get around to fixing, because what's the fucking point?
Do you swap them to other people?
No.
Or do you?
No. Yeah. No, most of my problems tend to be my thoughts. Actually getting stuff done, no, not at all. You either have someone in your company that does it, or in your relationship, it's your responsibility for X, mine for Y, you get it done. So I have a lot more fun when I'm feeling positive. And it comes from a few ways, you know, exercise, good food, the odd beer, you know, good friends, good family, right climate, you know, you got that battery pack on the back of your neck, you know, you hit a bit of vitamin D into that every morning.
It's amazing.
It makes a massive difference. So I'm glad that you think that I come across positively.
I do, because the entrepreneurial, and you are an entrepreneur. I don't know if I've said this to you before, but there's, you know, I've built and exited a company, but I am not a true entrepreneur because I've always fallen back or come back to working in paid employment. You know, I have an entrepreneurial mindset, but a true entrepreneur is driving a lonely task where there is a high burden that sits on their shoulders, when the money that comes in every single week, every single month, is the money that's used to pay other people, that is used to accommodate the family, to plan and to build a better life, right? It is a very lonely, challenging
Yeah, I've
space.
had some tough times in the last year. I haven't paid myself a salary for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, things are,
Yet you're still positive.
Yeah, 100%. But I do it for the money, but not to be rich. We will be if the things keep going the way that they're going at some point, based on the idea that we've got on. But I love to work. I love it. I love creating what we're creating and doing what we're doing. I get a lot of joy out of it, out of building a, call it whatever you like, a challenger consultancy, if you like. But we're winning at the moment because we've weaponized people in a good way to be able to go and do massive pieces of work at the right price and at what seems to be better standards than typical incumbents. And that's exciting for me and our clients and my colleagues and the people that work with us. I like that.
That's a kind of nice segue, I think, into the last part, because you brought this up, not me, around purpose, right? And you were talking about happiness, and when you look at the business that you have at the moment and your past businesses, and I completely aligned with you. If you do something for money or to get rich, then you have the wrong reason and you're destined for failure. But if you're doing it for something else, and you talk about joy, then you're on the right track, not just for personal happiness, but most likely for financial success as well. Is happiness and joy your purpose? Is that what's driving you in life, or is it something more?
Definitely my family, and friends and people that I know. I'm always happiest with friends and family, and or I do love work. I do. I love being at work. And I love doing what we're doing, and when the good stuff happens, being a CEO, most of it is just going from one problem to another, and then you have
It's energizing though, right?
yeah, and it's character building, and a problem that was a problem a year ago, you look at it now, it doesn't even register, and then you have these successes that go, yeah, this is good. What's the next one? And then it's a journey, So I think for me, happiness is being calm in here, because then you're always doing something that you enjoy doing. A lack of worry, which I've had plenty of, and there's plenty to come. It's again how you view it and how you choose to accept it and work around it, not ignore it. But I do think, and I have heated conversations with people about this sometimes, I think you can choose your mental state to some degree, particularly if you're not actually that pissed off about something, or it doesn't really matter. You go, I'm okay. Let's go do something more fun.
Just a final question. You're a father of a daughter, and I'm a father of a daughter. My daughter's 15 now, and a 18-year-old son. Do you think that, with all due respect to those who either chosen not to have children, are not having children, or are due to have children, from your perspective, have you seen a change in how you triage problems and triage the challenges in life? Have you seen your perception and approaches change since becoming a father?
There's something added to what you were doing. I mean, you've met Alma. She's pretty awesome. So that can't not have an impact on why you're doing what you're doing. And one of the main reasons I set this company was for her, so that I can take care of her in the future. And then you go, this is good, this is bad. And then you just go into your daughter's room and you go, but it doesn't have to be children to have that sensation. There's always something. There's always something else to grab onto and focus on. It's great having kids. It's great.
It can also be a pain in the ass as well.
Yep. Yes, it can. But they're time consuming. But you know, there's no better time really.